Keystone Cops.
What's going on, guys? I don't know how much of this I'm going to film all the way through. I might just kind of chop it up and put a video together, but I mentioned a few videos ago that I was going to pick up a full-size CQC8, and I have. I'm going to do a few things to it today, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I kind of wanted to show you guys side by side. I don't think I've seen a video quite like this where the two knives were put side by side. So you can see here kind of the size difference between the two. The blades are very close in length. However, you can see the difference in handle. This handle, I don't hate it, but I wanted something with a little more purchase. You can see right there. Again, I know I talk about this all the time, but my hand is 4.5 inches from one side of my palm to the other side of my palm. And you can see I can get a full 4-finger grip on there, but it's doable, but it's not exactly what I would like. So I stepped up to the full-size 8, and you can see I've got more handle, and this feels, if I want to do something a little more heavy duty, harder use, quote unquote, this is a little bit more comfortable for me. But I mentioned in my Instagram post that I posted before this video probably won't come out for a week or so after that post, but I am going to send this back to Emerson. Emerson, they're now doing several different models with the jungle color scales. And if you send the knife in for those specific models, they will replace your scales with the jungle color scales, of course, at a charge. So I am going to do that. In the meantime, especially with all this stuff going on right now, and as I'm talking about this is May 31st, 2020. So I'm sure you know what I mean when I say all the things going on right now. I don't really want to send this knife out, so I'm probably going to carry it for a while. But these scales are a little bit grippy for my liking, so I'm going to knock this down. Which again, if you remember from my mini CQC8 or my Horseman video, that was one of the reasons why I got this knife, because I do prefer something a little bit smoother, but I do like the Emerson as well. So that's why this will still stick around, and I do still enjoy that knife. But I want to knock this down. I'm going to use some 800 grit wet dry auto sandpaper to knock these down a little bit. I did add an aftermarket We the People clip on here, and it's just ever so slightly, if I can get it to focus, ever so slightly up above the scale. So I want to go ahead and take this off and bend it. And I also want to add some I'm going to add some nano oil in a second, actually, because it's not awful, and it's one of those things where if I added the oil, a little tiny drop of oil, it would smooth it right out. But this is more akin to the action of one of those older Emersons you would have gotten, where when you took it apart, it had all that black junk in the pivot, that really kind of thick, almost think like Glock grease, kind of like that stuff, but it's black. So matter of fact, let's see if we can get some nano oil in there. This is the 10 weight nano oil. I'm just going to try to add a little bit in there. Squeezing more in there than I would if the knife was apart. Really, I just want to get a drop on there, and that'll be enough to change the action altogether. So I just kind of blew on the back. You can kind of see I blew the oil in there, and I'm going to try to work it a few times, and it'll work its way down in there, and that'll change the whole action. And that's one of the things, you know, I got a question on my Instagram, how was the action of the knife or whatever. It's not going to be a fidget knife. It's not going to drop free. I have had one or two that do drop free. I do have some that flick open and all that stuff, but this is more of a utility work knife type situation. So that's more or less what this action is going to give you. Again, these are Nylotron washers, and the action is feeling a little bit better, but actually I am going to add a little bit more nano oil in here. Let me do it on camera so that way everybody can see what I'm doing. And I am adding quite a little bit this time. For some reason it's not getting down in there. All right, let's see. All right, I can feel it getting down there now. Yeah, that's already a lot better. So, like I said, people complain about the action or they say it's not smooth. All of the ones, the newer ones I've gotten besides this one, have been incredibly smooth out of the box. This one is a little bit grittier feeling, but just by adding that little drop of oil, it already has made a big difference. You can still hear it, but it's not. Before, I don't know if it picked it up on camera, but it was kind of squealing when I opened and closed the knife. Now it's not doing that. So it has made a difference, but I am going to take this apart and I'm actually going to add some, I think I'm going to add some 85 weight oil to this because I want it to stay put. There already is a little bit of lock stick. Oh, let me give you guys a look around the knife. There already is a little bit of lock stick, but this 10 weight oil, especially the way I apply it, and yes, I am heavy handed. People always talk about how expensive nano oil is. I've had this ½ ounce bottle for, God, 5 years or so, and even being heavy-handed, you can see how much is still left in here. But being heavy-handed, it will leak out and it will get onto the lock face and the lock tang, the blade tang, and it will cause even more lock stick. So I don't want that. So I'll be back. I think I'm just going to take it apart off camera, and I'll be back and I'll show you guys some of the sanding, and then we'll put it back together and I'll show you guys what I got. I'll check you guys in just 1 second. It just hit me. I said I was going to give you guys a look around the knife. So you can see that is the, and I have not taken the knife apart yet. This is still the knife as it was just a second ago. I'm just piecing two little clips together. Have not adjusted the G10 or anything, but you can see the liner is just a hair proud. The G10 is just a hair proud of the liner. The centering is on. No issues with centering. You can see there. And the bevel is consistent. The edge that has been stropped is consistent. I have used this knife a little bit. The stone washing is very consistent. The grind lines, as always, are very consistent. So just a decent little blade. I really like this. I had not used a CQC8 before, but after I got the Mini Horseman, I knew that this was definitely a knife that just, it lives up to the hype. I know they make lots of the latest cool models and all that stuff that people want. I actually sold my Quaken. That would be one of those models I'm kind of talking about. But there's just something about this knife, and it just works, even down to the fact that this wave, I noticed, is just a little nub. So even if I wanted to remove this, it's a lot easier to remove this than the wave feature on a lot of the other models. So I even thought that was pretty cool. But I just wanted to give you guys a look around the knife. I'm going to take it apart now and I'll be back. So here's the knife apart. You can see the two scales. You can see here there is a detent on this side that you can adjust. There are 3 standoffs, and then there's a screw that screws into either side of the standoff. Look at this pivot screw here. Look how big that is. So you can see that. The stop pin, it just sits in on either side of the liners here. And on this side, the female side of the pivot screw, you can see that grease that I was talking about there. See what I was talking about like Glock grease. And it is keyholed, so that way when you stick it in here, you can see the slot. I think you can see the slot here. Let's lift this up. You can see the slot right there on the top portion of the hole, so that way that pivot, the female side of the pivot, doesn't turn. And these are your Nylotron washers here. You can see that just adding that little bit of oil kind of washed away that gritty kind of grease that's in there. It's not as heavy as it used to be back in the day, and you can really kind of see how thick these Nylotron washers are. And you can kind of see there, I'm trying to bend it, and it's really not, there's really no significant deformation or anything like that. So that kind of speaks to a lot of people were asking about the deformation of the washers and things of that nature. They're plenty sturdy, guys. This is the knife after I tore it down and got everything cleaned up. You can see the, there you go. You can see now this is all cleaned up. You can see the wear that has already started to happen there. So that's good. We're breaking things in. This is the dirt and grease and grime that was in there. Not too bad. Not too bad. I did use some Aegis EDCI to clean this up. I'll touch on a few things that I did notice. When you hear us talking about dry grinding, and this usually is in reference to edges because that's where it's the most important, and we say there's a burnt edge. I don't even know if it's going to come up on camera. It's hard to catch, but right at the very edge of this tang is actually it's actually a little bit bronze, and that means that it was overheated in dry grinding. Now this is the tang. You know, this doesn't have to be super hard, but that's what we mean. You might be able to see it there a little bit, but that's what we mean when we talk about edges being burnt. That's not the edge of the blade. The edge of the blade is just fine, but you can see there a good example of what we're talking about. And the other thing I noticed was, this is one of the things you'll hear people complain about with Emerson. Very fine details are not always taken care of. Functionally it's fine, but you can see there's a little bit of the metal that's been left. You can kind of see it there. You can't see through the hole because it wasn't fully cleaned up. Now it's still functional. It doesn't matter, it's inside the knife. You'd never see it. Most people aren't going to take their knife apart, but those are some of the nitpicks that people talk about with Emerson. But you can kind of see the layout of the knife here. The washer is all cleaned up. Let's see. There, the washer is all cleaned up, and you can see the back of the scales. I do need to clean these. I didn't clean those, but I'm going to sand these down and then we'll put everything back together. I got everything else off to the side. I'm going to use 800 grit wet dry automotive sandpaper, probably a lot finer than most guys would start, but I figure it's better to go slow rather than fast. I don't have anywhere to be. You can see here that I have not sanded the scales yet. You can see where it's taken some of the skin, the dead skin off of my finger. So you can see kind of how aggressive it is. Let's see. This is a clean spot. You can see just how tacky that is and how it's just kind of removing that dead skin. You can almost use this like an emery board. So I'm gonna sand these down a little bit, and then I'll be back with you guys once I have it all together to show you what it kind of looks like. And here it is, all back together. It did wear a little bit unevenly. You can kind of see at the edges, it's a little more smoothed out. Down here at on the tail section, it's a little more smoothed out. But you can see, and this side is a little bit rougher than the other side, but you can see that is drastically reduced as far as the texturing goes. It's all those high points are knocked off. Like I said, a little bit on the edges, it wore a little unevenly. I might go back and wear it down a little bit more. It is still slightly aggressive, but that 85 weight nano oil, you can see it just smoothed everything right out. Once I got all that grease out of there, I put it on the liner side of the washer, between the washer and the blade, and around that pivot. So there is 85 weight all over. The lockup was pretty early when I put the knife back together. It didn't feel like it was fully engaging, but it's not closing, so it is fully engaged. And the lock stick, it sounds worse than it is, but the lock stick is actually better than it was right out of the box. So I'm happy all in all. Oh, the clip. The clip is now fixed. I do think it might have a little too much tension, I think I'm gonna put it back in the vise and bend it a little bit because I think I bent it a little bit too far. Centering, you can see here, there is the centering. It looks like it might need to be adjusted a little bit. Looks like it might be a little bit off to this side, but nothing too major. I don't know. Maybe it is centered. It's hard to tell on camera, but yeah, that's that, guys. So that's me modifying my CQC8. By the way, I put ballistol on these scales because once I used the wet dry sandpaper, it made the scales a little bit ashy, and adding some oil back will restore the true color of the scales. They are a little bit greasy, but I'm sure that'll kind of go away over the next couple of days. I know a lot of guys will use WD-40. I didn't really want to use WD-40. I use this because the main ingredient, let's see. The main ingredient in this is mineral oil. So I figured mineral oil is not gonna do any major harm or anything like that. Here we go. Contains mineral oil and and several other things. So I figured mineral oil is good to go. People actually even use it as a laxative. So I figured it wouldn't hurt anything. At worst case, I'll get a little upset stomach later on. Appreciate you guys watching. I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. Remember, a lazy man carries a dull knife, and don't be a dumb person with a smartphone.